Johnny Fontana, real world INFJ Scorpio, back with another video. Today we're going to talk about Rollo Tomassi, right? Not in the undermining way. Again, that's not what we do here. We don't necessarily try to undermine or try to diminish one's message. But again, it's coming from a place of analysis, right, in terms of what is being delivered, how it's being received, and understanding the nuances, the varying factors and elements when it comes to relationship and giving advice to folks, especially those who are married. And that's why I keep harping on the fact that there is a limited amount of material out there for not only for just married men in general, period, but for married men who of the red pill mindset, or at least have acquired some of the red pill traits over time, right?
There's a lot of talk about like a crisis of masculinity. There's this term toxic masculinity. And we can talk about whether or not that's true and how big of a problem that is. But what I don't think is really debatable is if you look at like the net amount of like images in the culture, there really aren't that many portrayals of men right now that are where the men both embody like classical masculine traits and are also pro-social, like they're not assholes.
Right.
It's hard to find, and that wasn't always the case. Like if you look back in the history of movies, you see all kinds of portraits of men who are have a more like nuanced kind of portrayal. Mm. So that's something that I was thinking about here. Like these guys the characters in the show like relate to each other emotionally, but they also like are very handy with like an M4. That's not something you really see very often, and I think that there's an interest in that. I think there's a hunger for that.
Again, because I think being red pill or whatever pill, I mean, it can deter from the ultimate way in that which we evolve or interact with certain individuals, because different people, different situations require a different set of tools, systems, beliefs, right? So you can't apply, everything to one. And when I say, although the red pill is about being the truth, but again, it's not necessarily how it's perceived, right, and internalized. Right? So just for argument's sake, it's like to say, yes, it's about the truth, but when most people internalize that, they don't really take it as that. They take it from a place of, well, we need to do this in order to achieve this. We need to achieve that in order to, be here or there. So that's what I mean by that. So in this video, he's talking about, we're discussing, let's say, the 30-year-old who's about to get divorced or who's divorced and moving forward, and how then they're going to achieve their level of success within the sexual market. And I have, again, some thoughts on it. It's not necessarily that I disagree. Again, it's not about disagreeing necessarily, but, and as I hold, it's not necessarily the message of red pill. It's not always the messenger, although there are a lot of grifters. And more often it is the recipient, the receivers, but not so much as it is the lack of nuance and the lack of detail, okay, from various points that's provided to the recipient or receiver of that message, right? So let's go.
if I were single again, if she died, or if I gave her, we were divorced, how would I live? What would I do next? Get in the gym? You should. What would I do? How would I improve myself? Build yourself up while you're still actually, objectively, you're still married. But in your head, you're kind of like, okay, we're just roommates. I'm not fucking her. I'm not doing anything. Well, clearly I'm not fucking her. What would you do? How would you prepare yourself for the sexual marketplace if you were single right now? That's what I mean by you have to have that mentality. The problem is that when guys get to that point and they go, well, I'm going to improve myself. And 6 months later, 7 months, 8 months later, they're looking better. They're in the gym. They develop new habits. They think they've given themselves permission to change their minds about themselves. And then the next step is, okay, well, if you were single now, would you get with the woman that you're with? Now is it worthwhile for you? Because the reason why guys don't change is because they're changing for her. They're not changing for themselves. They're not changing because they're put on the spot. If you were single today, you would develop a set of habits that are much different than if you're the lifestyle, the comfortable routine lifestyle that you're living in right now with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever who won't have sex with you.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying here. And again, that information, okay, definitely can resonate with a lot of men, right, in this space. However, we are assuming that the individual who is wanting to get out, is wanting to level up, is wanting to get rid of that old piece of equipment rather than maintaining it, okay, and working hard towards maintaining it, that person who then wants to sell that equipment, okay, and purchase new equipment in order to facilitate new business dealings, new set of affairs, we assume that that's coming from a place of scarcity, of deficit, which is not always the case. And I've said it in my previous videos. You have individuals who, again, have employed a lot of the red pill traits. Okay, they stand on their own 2 feet. It's not that their wives are not having sex with them. It's that they are not having sex with their wives. They're calling shots. They've decided, you know what? I no longer want to maintain this piece of equipment. This piece of equipment, it's not that it's bad. It's just that I have decided that I no longer want to fiddle and to have to constantly buy new parts. I would rather just go ahead and buy something that I can just upkeep on its own and just do regular oil changes, and that's it, right? Or I want something brand new and shiny that is going to attract, more clientele, more business, or whatever. That's in your mindset. But that's because it's the endeavor of that individual based on their newfound insight into whatever it is that they're experiencing, right? Whether it be midlife crisis or mid-career crisis, they're just saying, "Hey, listen, I want to move on." Again, it's not necessarily the case for everyone, but there are many of those who have that mindset that, hey, listen, we are not coming from that mindset of scarcity. Okay, we're not chasing success because we're already there. Like I said before, let's say you are in a management position at your job. You're not looking to become management. You're already there. Yes, you can strive to maybe be CEO, partner, whatever, but you're already management there already. So when it comes to achieving success, it's just basically incremental success, incremental progress that you're making. It's not because you want to just, and you are not of that scarcity mindset. You're working from a place of abundance, right? Clip one, go.
Okay, and it's a nuanced point, and it's kind of whack because For most people, it's like you do have to still work on optimizing stuff, but then the advice to switch things over is very contradicting to optimizing stuff. Meaning, for example, all the nuances, if you feel like complete shit, doing a positivity challenge helps a lot. But to move it over, you need to ask yourself, why am I not positive by default? Why do I need to do something to be positive? Doing something to be positive is reinforcing you're not a positive person. So different things. To get here, you need to go against everything you've been doing. You need to challenge everything you've been doing. It's literally a different paradigm. It's like, this should really fuck with you, by the way. Like, for example, what I'm telling you is like, who says you need to be successful with women? Who says you need to be healthy? Who says you need to be successful? No one. Who says you need to do that? Fuck that. You need to be like, oh yeah, fuck that. If you're like, no, but I must, or else, you're not there. Who says you need to be healthy? If you're a guy who goes to the gym, fuck going to the gym. Nothing you need to do. There's nothing. And then you need to trust the inspiration will kick in from there. And you're still, this doesn't mean that you should not hustle, by the way. This doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the gym, et cetera, but it should be coming from a very different place.
So you see what I'm saying to you? So some of us, we're already there, right? And that's why it's wrong to assume that every man is just coming from that place of scarcity. That it's like, oh, well, you know, we're going to divorce our wives and then we're going to hit the gym. Nah, dude, like we were hitting the gym already. Like we're in that space already. You know what I'm saying to you? Like we were getting looks. We are getting looks. You know what I'm saying to you? And again, I'm saying it, this is a little bit more personal note. Please don't project. Right? Don't project that I am in this space that I'm looking for something or that I'm looking to exit or whatever. It's just, we're having a conversation and I'm realizing that we all have these concerns. We all have questions. We all try to figure things out. We all come into a space where it's like, hey, what do I do? Do I make a decision? Do I, upgrade this? Again, if you're of that mindset, you decide whether or not I want to leave this job. If I want to, do that hustle and then, move on to the next, tier. Like, am I going to remain here? Is it something that is worthwhile, right? And if I do decide to move up, if I decide, not because anyone else is putting me in some place, if I decide to move forward or to seek other employment or seek other business endeavors, is it going to be detrimental to my current client not perspectives, but to my current client base? Is it going to affect, how we operate? Is it going to affect my current employees, those who I work with, my staff? You see, so you have to take all these in consideration, but it's because of your own doing. It's not because you're being forced to, or it's because it's not the equipment has failed you. It's just you decided that, hey, I want to decide whether or not this is going to make sense, and I need that perspective, and that needs to come from various points of context. It cannot just be from, oh, you are scarce, and you're going to end up having to go to the gym and level up, and this is what you need. No, I'm already there.
You're living a different way. That's why I say you have to mentally break up with that girl, divorce that wife that won't fuck you in your head at least, and say, okay, that's what our relationship's about right now.
Again, that's that mindset. Again, it's not to say that he is wrong, but I'm also saying that there are other folks out there. And again, this is from a place of abundance, because we don't have a lot of material, all right? A lot of sources for men which have that red pill mindset, okay, which are already established, which are already dominant in our frame, to go and seek advice and seek counsel. Because when you do seek counsel from that mindset, it's, oh, you need to protect, you need to do this, you need to do that, and death do you part and all that. You know what I'm saying to you? So you're not given the proper sound advice that comes from an objective point, and also comes from the understanding of how men, how men who are in their frame, who come from a place of abundance, how they operate, and it's not from a place of scarcity.
What would you do? Well, you probably would get in the gym. You probably improve yourself. If you want to go out there and
I'm already there. They're already
sexual
there.
marketplace. I don't want to say clubs because most guys, especially when they get older, like I don't go to the club. But what you do differently? How would you live your life differently? That's where it's supposed to force you into that sort of way of thinking, so that when you get to the point where you've improved yourself, you have to ask yourself a question. Now that I am higher value, now that I'm a 2 steps above my wife in sexual market value, and suddenly she has a sexual re-interest in me, is she even worth or would she have ever been worth my consideration? That's a good question, actually. I think that was actually why I wanted to recover this. If Derek Jackson was Derek Jackson, like who he is right now, like his sexual market value at his mid-30s, if he was that dude in the pictures, now, would he marry, much less date, a chick that looks like the girl that he met when he was a teenager? I don't think so. That's where you have to go with that. Because most men don't realize, that's why I say stay single at least until you're 30. Don't even consider getting married until your mid-30s, if ever at all.
No. That may be advice to his demographic, but it doesn't necessarily ring true for all men within all cultures. And that's why, again, it's not necessarily a disagreement, but again, I come from a traditional background. Because of my exposures in life as a child to different countries, different cultures, my mindset is not of that. It's not that of the American mindset when it comes to relationships. And of my associations also are not that of the American relationship dynamic. When I associate with friends, when I associate with family members, when I associate with associates of my family, of my immediate family, such as my father, my mother and all that, it's not from that American mindset of like, the man has to regulate or sort of have to regulate himself to this freaking box, right? And that he then needs to sort of put himself in the place of like, well, I am beneath my wife and I shall do as she says. And again, that's that mindset. But again, I understand where he's coming from, right? It's not to undermine his argument, but it's also to say that not every culture is the same, right? And you're not going to get this. So for example, even within, let's say, the Latin American culture, right? Even I have a few friends, associates, good family member of my stepmother, from Colombia. Recently, we had gone to see them over in Orlando. She came from Orlando. She hit the ground running, met her husband at the job together. They built the business together. And then they just recently built a home together where she was the designer. He's in construction. So together, as a unit, they built something. You know what I'm saying to you? They both have separate lives in terms of how they associate with friends and family. But when it comes to their livelihood, when it comes to their generation, it's like they're both in it as partners, right? And obviously they came from a place of understanding that it's a build, right? It's so when I met my wife, it's a process of building, okay? we built it together, right? Clip, two, go.
You do, because listen, if I don't know if my marriage is going to work out or not. You know, everybody asks me, so how's your marriage going? So listen, we take it 1 year at a time. Marriage is not an easy thing. It's very difficult. It's very complicated because, you know, you got a hard time getting along with yourself, let alone I got to get along with another person here. Are you kidding me?
Throw some kids in there.
And throw 3 kids in there? I mean, that's like a nuclear bomb possibly about to happen, right? So, but, you know, best friendships, best relationships, you got to get deeper. And the deeper you get and more comfortable you are with you, your upside gets bigger and you actually get a chance to enjoy the ride rather than trying to act like somebody else the rest of your life. I am very comfortable with who I am.
Right, and constantly examining yourself is how you try to get to the next level. And I mean, you're kind of like Jocko Willing, taking extreme ownership of what's happened in your life. Why do I keep attracting these women, these types of business partnerships? Why do I keep getting screwed over in deals or passed over? It's their fault. And then you're like, wait a second, maybe it's my fault. That's a pretty advanced way of looking at things.
Okay, so what I mean by this is that when I met my wife, I was 25. But I upon taking, and she was 19, and she had just been 20 when we married. But when I met her, she was 19. And when I brought her over to my house after 6 months of knowing her, I flew her over to the United States after having met her. And it wasn't a test, okay? Like, it wasn't a deliberate test, but I think maybe it was a subconscious test, right? Because I had never brought anyone home before. Of all the places that I've lived, all the, dare I say, 200 women that I've been with prior to her, right? Again, I was in the military, living in various countries, so my experience is different than that of the American, right? So I had never brought anyone or even considered bringing anyone home. There was something about her that I chose that she would be the one that I'm going to take home. Didn't mean that I was going to marry her. Because I was going to leave that country to go to another embassy to work, and I was going to leave her. So I didn't know whether or not I was going to marry her. So I didn't make that decision until 6 months into my next assignment at the embassy that I decided I'm going to bring her over, and I proposed to her, and we got married. And then I did all the paperwork, and she ended up getting her visa within 2 months, because again I worked at the embassy. And she basically dropped everything for me, right? But it was a building process when she came to the United States. It was a build. I built that because of my life experience. I needed to instill that onto her because I was older. I was 25, 26. She was 19, 20, right? So, but it's coming from a different space. I can surely expect those who are 25 to do the same thing. It's just having the know-how, and unfortunately, it's the exposure, right? So if you are only exposed to this, to Rollo, and again, it's not coming from a place of undermine, but you only have one perspective. You have a perspective of scarcity when it comes to, oh, like I'm already in this scarcity mindset. Like I'm already there. Like, oh, like I have to go to the gym. I have to do. No, you're already in the gym. You're already working out. You already have money. You're already successful. You're already healthy. You already have a good family dynamic. You already have a good relationship with your children, son, daughter, whatever. If you have stepkids, you already have a great foundation. You don't have to come from that scarcity mindset, right? And so that's what I'm saying to you. It's not that I'm not disagreeing with him, but there are folks who, again, is it by design that and again, I keep talking to myself, but I'm the only one right now. And also, I can use my family members, but I'm having a conversation with you. But is it by design? You see what I'm saying to you? That I married at 25. Same age that my father did. But my father, by the time he was 25, He had a house and 2 kids in New Jersey, right? In a wealthy part of New Jersey. You know, he had he had about 2 kids at 25. So it's one of those things where this mindset doesn't apply to everyone. It doesn't apply to all cultures. And that's one of the things that you have to understand, that when you start off from that scarcity mindset, because you're running away from something, you're running away from the fact of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or she's leaving me, or this person's doing something to me, and because I'm not good enough, then you're doomed, you're done, even before you've started.
Right. But stay single, stay on, spin plates, my friend, until at least 30 years old. Maybe after that, maybe early 30s. Because that will put you in a different state of mind. Because now you're going to go, okay, because I have to impress upon young men, especially when they're 19, 20 years, 21 years old, that your life is going to be much different when you get to be 30, 31 years old. Because what happens, and that this has been my experience over the course of the 20 years I've been in the manosphere, is I'll get guys who are like 29, 30 years old, 31 years old, and they'll go, Rollo, man, all these girls from my high school are hitting me up on Facebook, and now they wouldn't give me the time of day, but now they've taken an interest in me. I don't know, man, maybe I just been living the right life. And I'm like, no, they're desperate. No, you're the guy that they wanted you to wait for them until they got to 29, 30, 31 years old. That's why they're interested.
That may be the case, but again, I'm going back to the fact that he's speaking to a certain demographic. For me, again, and folks who I associate with, like my family members, those who, again, I've known, we're not waiting until we're 30 to call somebody who we barely know and says, hey, dude, like all these women, like they're attracted to me. Like if they never gave me the time of day. Well, where you been? You been locked up in a closet? You know what I'm saying to you? Like us, like we've been traveling. Like we've had our jobs that, ever since we were 19, 20. We've been doing our thing, and we've had success when it comes to women, when it comes to finances. Of course, if we weren't where we are as we are today, because it was that climb, that progressive state, right? In terms of achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve. I mean, there is always a starting point, right? Until you reach a certain stage. But again, it's during that progress, that climb, okay, you're achieving. Of course you have some failures. We all have failures. But what I'm saying to you is that mindset of like, oh, well, like I was nothing until I got to 30. I'm not saying that's what he's saying here, but what I'm saying to you is that mindset, that scarcity mindset of thinking, oh man, like all these, no, like fine, maybe they are, maybe those, but if you've had a whole lot of experience in between that time, then that shouldn't be such a big idea or a big thing. It's like, oh, they're coming after me. Well, because you had all this time in the world that you spent back at home in your hometown, as opposed to traveling the world, getting away from mommy's nest. Like, I don't even keep in contact but maybe 2 or 3 folks from high school. You see what I'm saying to you? I don't even know what these folks are doing. So I wouldn't even know whether or not they're going to give me the time of day. And I'm sure maybe they would, but I've passed that. And again, it's not from a place of elitism. I'm not speaking from a place of, I'm saying to you is that having that mindset of scarcity is just what's going to kill folks. And then again, he's talking to folks who are like, hey, high school, girls, they didn't talk to me and now they're talking. But why? What are you doing? Like still worried about folks from like 20 years ago, 15 years ago? Like you should have been moved on. You should have been experiencing the world. You should have been experiencing life. You see what I'm saying to you? And that's another aspect, right? That's another idea as well.
Hey man, I can finally fuck that girl from homecoming. Hey, I can finally get with that girl who wouldn't give me the time of day back when I was in college. I must be doing something right. No, you're just in the right place at the right time, and they're still ignorant of the game. That's what it boils down to. You want to know why you have a midlife crisis? Is because you've been ignorant of the game until you got to the point where you made decisions, and then you hit your peak potential, and you go, holy shit, I would have done it so much different. I'm 36 years old. I made partner in the law firm. I'm hitting my stride right now. I would have lived my life that could have been.
Again, I don't disagree with that. It makes sense. And unfortunately, he's, again, like I said, he's speaking to a demographic, to a certain demographic, which, if you think about it, that mindset comes from a place of scarcity, which means that if you were talking to me, this would not resonate with me, because it's like, okay, like, I don't get it, I don't understand it. And many other men who are like me, who are not necessarily rich and have all these cars and these assets and investments, that's, a lot of these folks are just average men, right? Hard working family men, right? But they don't relate to this because that's not their experience. And it's not to say that this is not the experience for a lot of men, especially in Western society, okay? And that's the point that I'm making. The point is not to say that he's not making sense and he doesn't have the right to direct, right, this information to a certain demographic. But my thing is that there's other folks who we're just not there when it comes to this, because we've surpassed it. Like, when it doesn't relate to us at all, right? So this information is not helpful. But I guess one would argue is like, okay, well, these men that he's directing this information to, is it the result of our upbringing? Is it the result of why the red pill is where it's at right now in terms of how men are looked upon? Of course, yes. So again, it's not about the message. It's not about what he's saying necessarily, but it's my argument. It's like, hey, listen, there are men who don't associate or ascribe to, his delivery of this information, because it just doesn't resonate with us. It doesn't relate. But we need a space for that. So that's my guess. My thing, right? It's like, this is good information for those who are in that space, but what are we doing? I guess my point is, what are we doing to sort of, rather than speaking to guys from a place of scarcity, speaking to them from a place of abundance? It's like, well, I want to direct it from a different place, right? Where it's like, all right, so you got this going on right now, you have this, but then you're in a situation where you're trying to figure things out. Well, you're going to have to make two decisions. Decision A, this, that. Decision B, this, that, and the third. Now you have to, probably thinking about, okay, what if you do this? If you do that, boom, 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 boom. If you do this, what are the repercussions? What's your family looking like? It's like when you go for, financial counsel. Hey, if you take money here, you put it over here. If, like, so for example, we're thinking about maybe investing in Italy right now. So if we invest in Italy, how is that going to affect us long term, because we don't have residency in Italy, right? And in Germany, we can't really do that because it's so expensive, and with the taxes and all that. And so we don't really have a bank account in Italy, because in order for you to invest in Italy, you have to have a local account, unless you're buying cash. And so there are a lot of details that you have to consider. But again, I don't even know where I'm going with this.
I would not have gotten married at 28 years old. I would not have had a kid at 30. I would not have done these things had I known then what I know now. Had I been the Derek Jackson that I am now, back when I met that girl, I would never have got with her because there's so many hot bitches I would have been with. And he would have been singing a much different tune. His grift, his business, his motivational positivity hustle would be way different than it is. He might be a Justin Waller for all we know. He might have been in the manosphere had things changed differently for him. I would argue that Hafiz would probably be a much different person had he not had all of that sort of like, oh, I got to stay dumb and blue pill until I'm 30. And then I'll get married and then I'll be doing things the right way. How many guys have committed suicide because they did things the right way? I did. You do the right thing. Yeah, you do the right thing and do the right thing, and then you realize that nobody's playing by the same rule books that you are. That's a midlife crisis. That's a midlife epiphany. Shit, I have all of this sexual selectivity, but I can't exercise it. Holy shit, I got all these hot bitches that want to fuck me, but I gotta stick with her because I got kids. That's the midlife crisis. I'm gonna go buy a sports car. Women the reason why women shame guys for the midlife crisis is because they're trying to keep them in the box. They're trying to keep them on the plantation. They're trying to keep their heads out of what could be. Hey, mister, your dedication's to me. It's better if the guy is actually in love with the woman and wants to stay with her and wants to have a relationship. It's way better if he's like the one who says, okay, I see value in this. It's different when that guy gets to the point where he's finally got to his peak potential and his wife has not kept up with her, doing her best to stay as close as she can to him. I think that's the main problem. One of the reasons why guys divorce their wives after a midlife crisis, or they get to be the Tiger Woods or the Derek Jacksons, right? The reasons why those women are in a really tough spot is because they felt like they are entitled, regardless of how fat they get, how old they get, how many kids they have, whatever, that because he's got dedication he's committed to me and the Lord, that's what he's got to do. He better show up on time when I tell him the dinner's ready. Right? That if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. That is a contrivance, a convention to keep that guy from realizing his peak potential and what his selectivity is. And don't get any bright ideas, mister. Don't hang out with Justin over there because he can bang all these hot chicks because you need to be here at the house back by 8 o'clock.
That was spot on, right on point. And so you see, again, at the end there, I totally agree with this message. And that resonates with someone like me or someone who has had questions. Again, like I said, I've been married for 20 years. Okay, so of course, there are going to be times where I'm like, what's going on here? Like, where are we in life? Like, you have these questions, okay? That, again, this is not a place of like, this doesn't come from a place of you're not loving your spouse or you're not wanting. It's from a place of certain individuals, okay, when you've operated from a level of success and high level of expectation your entire life or for the better part of your life, especially someone like me who's in the Marine Corps, who is expected to perform at high levels, right? You then also expect your partner or whomever that you associate yourself with immediately to also operate at that high level. And sometimes you go through these phases where you're just like operating at some higher levels, high extreme levels based on anxiety, stress, or whatever the case may be, and your partner may not be. And then so now you start having these thoughts. You start trying to figure things out. It's not to say that you're going to make any decision, but you are looking for that perspective. You're looking for that outlet. You're not looking for someone to say, go out and have sex with all these women, go out or divorce or whatever. It's like, no, like, what am I thinking right now? How do I approach the situation? And you want someone to say, oh, this is normal. It's normal for you to think about this, right? It's normal, for example, for my wife to consider, hey, listen, is it right for me, for her, that she has to follow my lead? So, for example, we're going to be moving to Germany, right? And she is a successful career right now where, like I said, she's a project manager, and she lives in a man's world, and she's created a whole lot of connections through vendors, contractors, and so she may have to leave that and move into a whole nother world. She gets to determine, not determine, but I have to take into consideration that she may be confused as well, right? And to say, well, listen, like, I'm going to leave this to go somewhere in the unknown, right? Where I may be unemployed for a bit, right? I may not have that sense of satisfaction because our kids, are what, 6 and 13, and can be 7 and 14. So it's not like they're babies, right? So there are questions, that she can have, that she can, decide whether or not she wants to follow or not. Obviously, she's going to follow. But what I'm saying to you, though, is that I don't know what's going through her mind. I don't know, to what extent she's like him. Obviously, she wants to come, but there is doubt, there is question, right? And one never really reveals, their personal deep insight, because they may not necessarily want to offend, right, their partner, because again, it's their own personal thoughts, and you have to respect that, right? You have to respect that. And so, but I also, again, like I said, I don't think he's wrong. It's not for me telling you that I think he's incorrect in his assessment. I'm just saying that, unfortunately, whether it be that there are more men operating from that mindset of scarcity, that may be the case. But what I'm saying to you is that is not always the case. That there are men who are not operating from that point of view. And that we need to acknowledge them as well. We need to acknowledge and also have a balance in how we approach and how we deliver our message. And that it's not always, like there are some men who have achieved that midlife crisis, but have always had that mindset from the beginning. Now they're just come to the point of like, all right, do I make a decision? Do I upgrade my kitchen equipment? Do I keep it, right? And then spend money somewhere else and invest somewhere else. You see what I'm saying to you? Like, do I buy this house if I have the money? Do I buy this investment property cash, right? Or do I use somebody else's money and invest, and invest that cash somewhere else? You see what I'm saying to you? Like, these decisions you have to make, and sometimes you can't make it on your own. So, but anyway, that's another one for the books. Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ Scorpio. We out.